Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today I want to talk about a topic that I've been thinking about talking about for a long time. I've talked about it in the past, but that is, should Wizard101 be made more difficult? Should Wizard101 focus more on the difficulty side of things and ramp up the difficulty of their game a bit compared to what it currently is? There's two different camps for this, right? There's the people who think, yes, it definitely should, and combat gameplay is definitely a good thing for KingsIsle to focus on in the future, and then there's the people that think, no, this game isn't designed to have difficulty and difficult combat, and thus it shouldn't be made more difficult. So, without further ado, let's get into the different sides of the argument. Let's get into what I personally think, and then what I think would be added to the game or changed. So, first off, the people who think that this game should be more difficult. These people think that combat and actual focusing on stats, min-maxing, figuring out the proper strategies is intellectually stimulating and is a really good thing for a game to do. This is the argument that for the game to truly thrive and go forward, it really needs to add a layer of complexity to the combat and difficulty to make people more stimulated, make people more actually invested in the gameplay rather than just, say, the story or the haha funny number go up kind of thing. Really, it's arguing for that. The counter argument, I would say, are the people who argue that this is a kid's game, or this game has survived this long with the level of difficulty of combat and has thrived based on having a little bit of a lower effort combat. Well, let's go into what my argument is for it, what I personally think about these two sides, and what I think should be done about it. The ultimate question, what we're asking, should Wizard101 be more difficult? I say a resounding yes. I think that difficulty in video games adds a layer of complexity and a layer of interest that isn't there in non-complex games. Being able to, struggle with things and then overcome that challenge and actually succeed is a very rewarding thing and tends to make people more endeared to games. There's a reason why Dark Souls, one of the most difficult games of all time, is so popular, and the reason for that is because it's very difficult, and then people feel very rewarded when they actually beat that very difficult boss. And it's not just impossible gameplay. It's not like they're just hammering you into the ground. It's they have an attack pattern, they have a strategy, and you can counter strategy and beat that. Now, I'm not saying that Wizard101 should be made into Dark Souls. Let me say that firsthand. I'm just saying that I think that Wizard101 should focus more on making the gameplay more a strategy thing. And I think that this is really important for the survival of the game, to be able to actually make the gameplay more complex, more in-depth, and actually focus on that. Now, real quick, I just want to bring up kind of the main spark of this video and what opinion I think is really, really solid and what I think is the main driving point of this video that I want to show you. And that is a comment by Ferric that he left on one of my videos the other day, basically just on school identity, and he kind of sparked this video. He's the one that actually said, this is what my opinion is, and definitely goes in line with this video. So, only watched the first 30 seconds of so far, but I'm glad you mentioned that it's a player-based thing. A loud number of voices in the Wiz subreddit community, yes, I'm calling them out specifically, is pathetic beyond belief when it comes to making anything even remotely difficult or challenging to the player base. And if you as a content creator dare support change that makes the game more difficult, people will act like you killed their entire family and tortured their pets to death for supporting anything that makes it more difficult. And yes, I have noticed this in the past as a content creator myself. People do not like change and do not like difficult change. Like, go back to playing games with difficulty meant for 5-year-olds if you think them wanting you to grind for good stats and be challenged is a bad thing in an MMO of all things. This comment right here perfectly describes my opinion, and I'm glad that, he has an eloquence with words that I don't always have. This is exactly what I want to drive forward in this video, and is what I want to say. MMOs, and Wizard101 is included in that, are designed with a purpose. They're designed with the ability to build up your character, to face challenges, and face difficulty. They're not designed for you to breeze through the game, get to a high level, and then PvP for the rest of your life. They're not designed for you to do the side systems like gardening. They're designed for you to have a challenge and to be intellectually stimulated and actually go into the game with strategies and battle plans. And that's something I feel like personally Wizard101 is missing and has been missing for a very long time. So I kind of want to get into the timeline of this real quick, talk about it before I talk about actually what I think they should change in regards to this. So I would personally say the last time this game was truly really difficult and truly had that layer of difficulty was around 2014-2015. The reason for this is this is before a few changes. First off, this is before the 20% health reduction. It means that all enemies in Azteca had about 20,000 health plus. All enemies in Chrysalis had 24,000 to 30,000 health plus. A lot of enemies were genuinely difficult in regards to health. And this is something I think KI actually made a bit of a mistake on, because following Chrysalis, they went into Arc 3 and they did a whole almost factory reset of enemies. In Polaris, most enemies have about 10,000 health, and that was about the line that they had. And that's not to mention that also Darkmoor was released, and Darkmoor brought even more damage to gears and upped player damage. So everyone's now stronger than they were during Chrysalis by an actual significant margin, while all the enemies are made significantly weaker than they were in Chrysalis by a significant margin. This is, in my opinion, a mistake, especially when they didn't decide to keep correcting that. Like, by Imperia, enemies were still not nearly as strong as Chrysalis, right? Like, a lot of bosses had around 12,000 health around that line, and this never really went back up completely. In Lemuria, even the newest world, enemies still only have 20,000 health in some very rare scenarios. So even nowadays, with our insane damage compared to what it used to be, we're still not back at that level of that original Chrysalis health. And I think that this is really a mistake. I think that genuinely we need more challenging enemies as time goes on, and not severely underpowered enemies. And I understand that they definitely ramped it up in regards to cheats, but not nearly enough to the point where I think that overall the world is a more difficult world. I think a lot of these worlds are super easy and really need a raise in difficulty. And as I mentioned, they were even lessened in difficulty. The 20% health reduction also lessened the difficulty of these future worlds, which I think was just really not the way to go. I would go and try to make like a ratio of damage to health, boss health, but realistically that will take way too much time. But what I'm gonna say is back then we had bosses with 24,000 health with at max around 100 damage to maybe 120 damage, I would say was the average. Nowadays, we have bosses with 15,000 health to 20,000 health with 180 damage, 160 damage. That isn't the same ratio. In fact, that ratio is significantly worse. And I think that that was the last time that this game was truly, really difficult. On top of this, another thing that removed a layer of difficulty was pets. Pets used to be a lot worse than they are now, I would say. And this was prior to, you know, quint damage pets being like top tier, and, you know, triple doubles also being really good. This was before those were easily accessible, before those were a thing you could just create just on a whim. I think genuinely those were some of the most difficult days in the game. So now that that's out of the way, let's go into what I personally think is what this game needs and what I think should be done right now. First off, while KingsIsle can continue buffing us, they need to buff the enemies in relation to us. I think they genuinely thought that Chrysalis and Azteca was too difficult, which I do think it was difficult, but I think it was difficult in the wrong way. They need to buff the enemies without making them into damage sponges. I think this is a significant problem most games run into, where they lack a complexity in them. They lack a different strategy or doing something different. What they need is different ways for bosses to have cheats that genuinely are challenging, that you need to strategize around. Personally, I know a lot of people might not think this, but I personally think the final Lemuria boss was one of the bosses I've had the most fun with, in a very, very long time. I don't know exactly how many people share that opinion, but I genuinely think it was interesting to go in, try to figure out all the cheats, and then try to counter them. I think that they need more bosses that have interesting cheats and interesting dynamics that actually challenge you as a player in ways that aren't just annoying. The difference is drawing a line between those cheats that are just genuinely annoying and tedious and annoying to deal with, and actually making something that is genuinely interesting on the mind. I think that that's really important for difficulty and is what they need to do. Another thing that they need to add, and this is something that I think is more important than anything, is they need to improve the enemy AI. They need the AI to make good and logical decisions similar to players and actually be able to build themselves up and take you down in ways that are actually interesting, right? Because as of right now, enemies just pick a random card from their hand, I think. I think that that's probably as far as the AI goes. They don't have the AI, whereas they're like, okay, maybe I should save my pips for this, or maybe I should hit now instead of passing because this player is weak. I think that that is super important and would add such an interesting layer to just Wizard101 in general, right? Because I think that's what Wizard101 is missing. It's missing that challenge factor in the form of the AI and actually the enemies being intriguing and difficult. And that's what it really needs. It's not like you see in literally any other game, the enemy just stop attacking you when you're at low HP. They don't do that. They don't go, okay, this character's at low HP, let's just pass this round. Let's just not hit, right? Which a lot of enemies do. I've seen enemies at max pips pass around instead of hitting someone who's on 100 HP. And I think that they need to actually adjust that and change that so that it's like, okay, this person is on this low HP, let's hit them, let's kill them. And I think that this would add definitely a much bigger layer of strategy. It would give a reason to use shields for a lot of people. Like, I've never used a shield in my life. I think it would be cool if I, had to pack some shields in my deck and go, okay, this round I'm low on HP, I know that the AI is probably going to hit me, so let me use this shield and counter that. Stuff like that is really, really, really important in a lot of games. And let me just kind of finish off this video with my ultimate statement. If you think that this game shouldn't be challenging, I don't know what you are wanting to play. This is an MMORPG. This is a game designed with difficulty in mind and designed with your character improving to combat the different enemies. Right, this is rated everyone 10 and up. This isn't rated for children. This is rated for children, but it's not rated for toddlers. It's not rated for 5-year-olds. It's rated for everyone 10 and up, and I can't tell you how many other games there are that are rated everyone 10 and up that are genuinely interesting and have actual complexity to them. Games that genuinely are challenging and require thinking and require strategy and require thought, character building, all of these things, which are exactly the main premise of MMOs, is for you to build up your character and fight the enemies. So if you're on the side that Wizard101 shouldn't be more difficult, I really don't know what's up with you. I feel like the people who say that Wizard101 shouldn't be more difficult really need to readjust and think of why they're playing Wiz. Are you playing Wiz just because you want to see the haha funny enemy die? In that case, maybe you should go play like, I don't know, maybe you should go play like Call of Duty against some bots or something, right? Like, go do something else that's like easy and apparently mentally stimulating for you instead of an MMORPG, which requires thinking and thought and strategy. So really, that's what I wanted to go over today. I think that that's the most important thing that this game needs right now. I've talked a lot in the last week or two about what I think King's Isle should change. This is what they should change more than anything. Make the combat actually interesting. I don't want to just blade, feint stack, and then kill enemy. I want to have a genuine challenge and actually force myself to be more intellectually stimulated, especially in these higher worlds, which have been much easier nowadays. So that's really it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below and, have some discussion, have some friendly discussion, I'm interested to see some discussions in the comments below. But otherwise, that is it for today. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Adios.